السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي اللهم صل على محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وسلم تسليما جزا الله عنا محمدا ما هو أهله. My dear respected brothers, elders, sisters and youngsters, wherever you may be, first and foremost, I hope you are well, and I hope Ramadan is going well for you. And today what we wanted to do, because of the past four weeks, we have been doing on the theme of engagement with the children. But before we formally go into the discussion, first and foremost, I would like to recite أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يوم يفر المرء من أخيه وأمه وأبيه وصاحبته وبنيه. So my dear respected brothers, elders, we are still discussing the themes of engagement with the children. And tonight, I wanted to bring to a conclusion, although this topic needs far more wadahat, far more clarification, far more explanation, and there's many things that can be covered, still we are only touching the tip of the subject, i.e. overview. Inshallah, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives me the ability and the tawfiq, that we can do formal training on this on day training on this, inshallah. So just a quick recap, that as a Muslim, our responsibility is to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the worship takes many different forms. For example, we pray salah, 5 times a day salah. We also go to business dealing, we do business transaction. Like that, we are responsible for, as adults, and especially if we are parents, we are responsible for our actions, and especially the way our children are brought up. Because today they are children, tomorrow they are leaders. Today they are children, tomorrow either they will be a liability for you, or they will be a zakhira for us, a passive income for us, a blessing for us, as the hadith narrates, qurratul ayn for us, coolness of our eyes. So really it's up to us, because we as instructors, Nabi Karim sallallahu alayhi wasallam was the best teacher, best instructor in the entire world. That's why the Sahaba radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'een became the best Sahabas in the world. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them the glad tiding, radiallahu anhum wa radu an. So likewise, we as teachers to the next generation, we have to fulfill our responsibility as our parents. Otherwise the consequences can be very, very severe. And if you look at the examples, live example these days is, you will see third generation, second generation, third generation, fourth generation, they were Muslims. However, this generation, they no longer Muslim. Likewise, 3 generations ago, 4 generations ago, they were non-Muslim, but today they are Muslim. So it is our responsibility, it's incumbent upon us, it's wajib upon us, farz upon us, it's compulsory upon us, necessary upon us, to make sure that we do the parwarish, the looking after of the child correctly. And that's the key word, correctly. What constitutes being correct? That is the key subject, that is the key term. So one of the key terms that we've been covering consistently in all our discussions is the engagement and the environmental factors. Engagement with a child, going on a journey with a child, as well as the environmental factors. The environment is what shapes the child for tomorrow. Environment is what shapes the child for tomorrow. That child can become one of the greatest leader, or one of the greatest, or a great liability for us. Not only for us, but for the community, the entire community, entire ummah. Because that child can become corrupt, that person can cause corruption in the community, that person can cause a lot of disturbances in the society. For example, a drug dealer, a person who's selling alcohol and who's doing corruption and fraudulent activities, that person one day was also a child. Nobody is born a fraudulent person. Nobody is born a thief. Nobody is born a daku. Nobody is born a prime minister. Nobody is born a CEO. Nobody is born a businessman. They go through a process. Everybody goes through a process. So now the question is, how much were we or how much are we involved in that process? That is very critical for us to understand, because the child is a byproduct of the environment. And as I keep saying, this hadith is mentioned that a child is born on his fitrah, child is born innocent, child is born free of any nooks, any deficiencies, any gunas. But depending on us, depending on his environment. And what do I mean by the environment? It's predominantly the family, the parents, the primary carers, i.e. the father, i.e. the mother. If the child is living with his parents, so immediately parents. If there are grandparents available, influence of the grandparents. If there are aunties and uncles within the environment, it's the influences of all these people. But more so, it's the influence of the parents that will shape the child. Now, if you have an absent father, if you have an absent mother, if you have a lazy mother, if you have a lazy father, absent, lazy parenting, or when a child is calling out to you and you're not there, giving the child security, giving the child comfort, giving the child assurances, when you're not there explaining to the child the situation, the scenarios, etc., etc., but rather you are aware, you are too busy in your own mashghala, you're too busy in your own issues, or you have your own childhood trauma that you have not dealt with, then that will also have an impact on the child. So our engagement with the child, our engagement with the community, our engagement, right parvayish of the child will have a huge impact. And as I said before, the learning or teaching a child starts from day of conception. Starts with the dua, and the dua is when you pray the dua, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will safeguard the child from becoming a kafir. According to some ulamas, they will be safeguarded from the corruption of the world. Then from there, when the life is given up 4 months, all the lived experience that the mother goes through, child will feel all that, child will develop that, the child's DNA will be formed, child hereditary, that was passed down, the genes, etc., from the parents will be formed. All that will be formed depending on the level of interaction you have with the child, the level of the comfort the mother feels, etc. And if the child is born prematurely, and that can be due to a number of factors, i.e. there could be stress factors, or there could be any other issues, then most likelihood that child will also be born with some form of learning disability. And if that child is born with a learning disability, that child will have additional needs in comparison to a child without learning disability. And that learning disability can be in many forms: ADD, ODD, occupational defiance disorder, i.e. you cannot be directed with that child. The child will always not listen, will always try to be defiant towards your order. So it's about working together. If the child is autistic, the child will usually have some form of social interaction problem, some form of eye contact problem, but they will be very clever in certain things. The certain senses will be very high up there. They might suffer from senses issues, hearing issues, or seeing issues, or they may be smelling. They might have a high sense of smell or high sense of hearing, and they might like the routines, and that can be quite awkward to a lot of people. They might say things that are socially unacceptable, but they will say it in innocent. One of the child who suffers from autistic always say to me, can you give me some money? And I will say, I don't have money, but there's a cash machine says it's free money. They could not understand that although it says cash machine free money, they could not understand that this is your money, you're taking it out. So additional needs. Then you have children who are no longer living with you. Then you have children who are no longer living with you, or due to a circumstance within your household, i.e. you are ill, or you are not safe to the child, or both of you combined as a parents, you're considered not to be safe for the child. Then that child has to live with either a family member of yours, and if you have a family member but they don't have enough space in the house, or they have some form of issues, a health issue, etc., that child might not live with you. Then depending on the age, that might child be up for adoption, depending if they're under 8, or if they're above 8, they will be put for long-term fostering. But that long-term fostering or adoption, you cannot guarantee whether the child will be within a Muslim household. It could be anybody, as long as anybody who understands the basic principle of Islam. But you and I know we are born as Muslims, but how many of us are practicing Muslim? There's a difference between Islam and Muslim. Islam is the pure religion. It's 100% correct. It's always been there. It will always remain. However, the practitioners of that religion, that's where the characteristic and that's where the question is. That's where all the question arises. That's why we sit next to a mashayikh. That's why we go to ulama. That's why we go and study further. That's why we always constantly making dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for us to become better Muslims. Why? A, we want to attain Jannah ourselves. B, we want to leave a legacy. We want to leave an influence on the people around us. But therefore, because of our actions, other people are not being negatively influenced. But what is the biggest zakhira a person can do? What is the biggest zakhira? What is the biggest task a person can do? A biggest task, according to the hadith, is leaving a child behind. Because when every single one of your actions are finished, the day you die, everything is finished. You cannot do bad deeds anymore. You cannot do bad deeds anymore because you're in the grave. Your next life has started. The only thing that can be done is good deeds. So if you left a child behind who makes du'as for you, who prays for you, who misses you, and every time that he or she misses you, sheds a tear for you, and every time he or she sheds a tear for you, makes dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But if you hurt that child, if you weren't there for that child, when that child needed you, or you hurt that child, you abused the child physically, mentally, emotionally, and that child ended up in care, every time he remembers you with anguish and pain and hurt. Or when you had the upper hand over the child when he was 10 and 9 and 6 and 7, and you were giving him good slaps and hitting and beating, and that person was too scared to say anything, but ended up going to madrasa, going to the masjid and becoming a good Muslim. So out of responsibility, out of obligation, that person takes care of you. But deep down inside that person, there's no love and mahabbah. Why there's no love and mahabbah? Because every time comes to service you or do your khidmah, what happens? All trauma keeps coming back. And I know ulamas, and I know scholars, and I know elderly people in the 40s, in the 30s, in their 20s, in the 60s, and they tell me, Karisab, I struggle doing khidmat of my parents. I struggle doing khidmat of my parents. However, I have to do that because it's an obligation. Because in the hadith says, Al-Jannatu tahta qudamil ummahat. Ridha Rabbi fi ridha al-walidain. Wa sakhatul Rabbi fi sakhatil walidain. So active on the hadith, they are doing that. However, out of love and mahabbah, they're not doing that. Because they understand looking after parents is very, very important. So the question is, what have we done about making sure the welfare of the child is maintained? And I keep saying this is a golden rule. This is a golden rule. We should put it in our walls and we should remind ourselves constantly. Today's child, tomorrow's leader. Today's child, tomorrow's corrupter. Someone who causes havoc in the environment. Someone who causes problems in the area. Because children are like rough diamond. Diamonds, if it's not cleaned and polished properly, it will cut through things. It's rough. It will cut through things. When a child is messing around outside of being naughty and silly and causing all sort of havoc and corruption, people will ask, whose son is that person? Kiska beta hai, in a language, whose son is that? Whose daughter is that? Then it comes back to you. So when you think like that, our input in a child is so underestimated. Our input in a child is so undervalued. It's undervalued. Then when a spousal relationship breaks down, what happens? We use that commodity, we use the valuable tool that's going to lead us to Jannah. But we use that commodity, I use the word commodity because this child is zakhira. Why is a child a zakhira? Because of the hadith as I mentioned, munqati, all the actions are munqati, except that the pious child and sadqa jariyah and leaving ilm behind which benefits other people. But more so, on the day of judgment, يَوْمَ يَفِرُّ الْمَرْءُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ وَأُمِّهِ وَأَبِيهِ, when we have to stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask and answer every single one of our actions. If on that day, you and I, we did not fulfill our responsibilities, on that day, we did not give the child a good parorish. On that day, we did not give the child a good education. On that day, we did not build a good relationship with that child and give him good identity what Islam means. And what does it mean to a good Muslim? On that day, our child will answer against us. Our body parts will answer against us. And our books will be given on our left hand. And that day when the book is given on the left hand, this is called ultimate failure. Ultimate failure. And in the Quran it says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu qu anfusakum wa ahlikum nara. O believers, protect yourself and your family from the hellfire. Because we need to understand our responsibilities. In my line of work, what I used to do, we would usually typically deal with the worst type of parenting. However, there are many millions and millions and millions of people out there who, majority of us, we absolutely love our children. We absolutely want to do the best for our children. Everything that we felt we never had in our childhood, we want to give that to a child. However, if it's not done according to the sunnah, according to the hadith, because what is success? Success is when you're able to leave this world. When we are able to leave this world, and when we die with La ilaha illallah on our lips, and when we enter the grave and the Farishtas ask us 3 questions, Ma Rabbuka, Ma Dinuka, and who is this person? And we're able to pass all these tests and then finally stand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and answer all our questions. That day, remember, you and I, we will not be able to run away. That day we will not be able to make lies. That day we will not be smart and super smart and make something up and make it convincing on that day. Because there will be cameras everywhere. The Farishtas will give us, open you up to us. And the body parts will talk against us. So on that day, if you're able to successfully pass that, and according to the hadith is, if you're able to look after 2 daughters and make them married off, then Allah will guarantee you Jannah. It's a long hadith, and then that's basically the khulas and the summary of the hadith. And that's how we go. So responsibility of looking after children is not something to be taken lightly. What do? We have responsibility of going to work. We have responsibility of looking after the house. We have the responsibility of providing for the family. We have responsibility of the community. So we have so many responsibilities, and at times we get tired. When we get tired, and when our emotional needs are not being met by each other's as adults or spouses, what do we tend to do? We tend to take our anger and our frustration and everything else on that child. What has this child done to us to deserve this? Because what happens is when you and I, when the spouses are arguing, and what happens? The father or the mother will take it out on the child. Any little thing, physical beating, emotional beating, cursing, and so forth. When the child has done something wrong, what happens? We give bad dua. We curse that, may Allah Ta'ala do this to you. However, as parents, whenever we make dua, it's guaranteed. There are certain du'as are guaranteed. One of them is a person who's oppressed. When they make dua, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, there's no parda between Allah and the person. Another one is a parent. When a parent makes dua for that child, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts that dua. So when you're angry with that child, no matter how angry you are, you still make dua for that child. One of our good friends and pious person, our elder used to say, whenever you make dua, whenever you are angry with someone, say, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make you the imam of the haramain. Because it's so hard, so difficult, responsible job. May Allah Ta'ala make you an imam. It's not something easy, it's not something light. So even when you are making dua for your child, or cursing your child, make dua for that person, for the goodness of that child. Because you never know, this dua may be accepted, and when that dua is accepted, your child will be destroyed. Or on the other hand, if you make a good dua in an anger, with full of emotion, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept it and elevate your child. And that child will become your zakhira, will become your passive income, will become the means to enter Jannah. Shall I continue, or there's some questions?
There are some questions. Let's pick up one question.
Okay.
How do you deal with device addiction amongst children?
How do you deal with device addiction? Okay, it's a new phenomena. And I use the word phenomena because it's still a misunderstood concept. We don't have enough answers for that. Device addiction, to be honest with you, is any addiction is usually, whether it's gambling, whether it's smoking, whether it's alcohol problem, whether it's drug problem, whether any form of addiction, whether some other times we do, any form of addiction is usually something we find that. I know some people use devices to avoid the everyday. They do that to block their mind so they don't have to think about their life because they're unhappy with their life. They're unhappy with the situation they're in. So what it is, playing games on a daily basis or watching movies on Netflix or watching movies on YouTube, it's a great way of passing time. So what do? They think I'm running away. If you ask a person who's an alcoholic, they will tell you I'm using alcohol as a means to run away. If you ask a person who's smoking, majority of the time they're also running away from stress. If you're asking a person who's drug addicted, they were running away from something. So typically they're avoiding the inner consciousness and inner self, and there's an emptiness behind it. So how do you avoid that? Like anything else, and I should mention this as well. There's another addiction, pornographic addiction. Very, 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 very dangerous. According to some research, they say that it's like a warfare against people, to destroy nations, to destroy community, and destroy society. According to some research, this is quite contradictory research. So the question is, these are some real issues. So if you're addicted to device, be it tablet, be it mobile phone, be it Facebook, be it a laptop, be it a computer, be it TV, without any thread of a doubt or any shred of a doubt, 100% you will come across some form of images or sounds or videos that you're not supposed to look at and watch and see and hear. So that's very detrimental, both in Iman, both mentally, both emotionally, and the biggest one is your Iman level goes down. Hypocrisy level goes up, because you start hiding things. You start behaving one way inside your bedroom when the door's locked, and one way when you're outside of the bedroom. And that's a typical sign of a hypocrisy. The question is, how do you reduce it? One of the best way to reduce that, you need to identify what are you running from. Meditation. You need to do meditation, and I shared that before. Meditation is, one of the things that you can do is put your hand like that, put the hands under your belly, and control your breathing. And when you're controlling breathing slowly, think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, think of the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If there's a sheikh close by, if there's a great pizza close by, get bathed to that person, and inshallah, just by being in the company of a pious person, that person's influence will fall on you. Person's influence will fall on you, will rub off on you.
What's bait?
Bait is when you go to a pious person, a sheikh, and you say to him, I want to be a good person, and that person will give you certain ma'mulat and amals for you to follow, based on sunnah and hadith.
So you just double check, see your
certain guidance.
Guidance on Islam and path.
So he will guide you.
Guide you. It's like a mentorship.
Sure.
Literally, it's mentorship. We say in any profession, make sure if you have a mentor, in high-flying jobs, apparently that jobs that are very, very corporate type of job, what they say, we will guarantee you a mentor. Why? Because just to help you grow, to help you develop. Likewise, it's about us Muslims developing into a better Muslims.
I think the person asking the question.
So how do you?
Children, is that then the children?
Yeah, with children you have to have a routine in place, very strong boundaries in place. There has to be consequences. You should initially limit them to an hour and a half maximum. Depending on their age, if they're under 7 and 8, no more than half an hour to 45 minutes. 45 minutes is max. 1 hour if they're really, but you should never use this guide as you know what, I'm tired, just watch TV. So TVs, any electronic gadgets, anything after 6 o'clock for teenagers, for anybody youngsters, they shouldn't be watching. At 6 o'clock routine should be, they have a bath, they change the clothes, they start reading Quran, they start reading books. It could be any books, as long as they halal books. Doesn't matter what language it is, whether it's school books, whether it's novel book, doesn't matter whatever it is. As long as they're appropriate for the child's age, we should do that. And best of that is, of course, reading Durush Sharif, reading Fadail al-Durur, reading Quran, reading Sunnah, reading these hadith books, Riyadh al-Salihin, English version, or reading stories of the Sahaba, stories of different people. Fantastic. What you're doing is you're calming the child down. You're calming the child down, calming the child. If they're super hyperactive, give them a rub on the back. Use your hands to give them a rub here, massage the hands, because what that does, physical touch, reminds the child subconsciously of them being inside your womb. Mother's touch, similarly father's touch, very powerful. Human touch to person, very, very powerful. This mu'anaka, this handshake is very powerful. This gala milana is very, very powerful. Sunnah Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So limitation is, don't take it. If they're addicted to it, they're already spending 3, 4, 5 hours a day, just don't go in the room one day and say, you know what, I'm taking it out one day. That's not going to work. That will create more problem. Reduce it slowly. Initially, you reward them. So if you do this 1 week of task, I will give you this reward. But slowly you reduce it. It's not about winning the battle; it's winning the war. So there's a saying it's not about you winning the battle on that day. It's about long-term goal. That child's been using for 2 hours a day for the past 6 months. Don't just take it out. It's going to cause a lot of problems. You're going to upset that child too, more so than anything else. Yes, it's a learned behavior, but that child will feel hurt inside them and say, why is my parent taking it away? But you must talk to that person, this device is no good for you. So rewarding the child, get them involved in some form of other activities, take them out, lockdown, difficulties, very much so, I understand. Play with them on the floor. If it means lie down on the floor and do silly noises, it doesn't matter.
Just follow on from that. Is it permissible to give the children games consoles, take them away from tablets and phones?
They're all equally as bad as each other because they're all electronic stuff and everything comes under supervision. You have to supervise because I know young ladies at the age of 11 and 9 and 10, young boys at the age of 11 and 12, they have the latest phone. And I checked last time and someone had better phone than me and he was a 13-year-old. And like, subhanallah, I wanted to change my old phone, 2 years old. So the point is, what is that child doing 10 o'clock with a mobile phone on in their bedroom? When was the last time you checked his history? When was the last time you checked then there's encryption they can use. Is he like some kind of dark mode they can go into and there's no history at all? Children at the age should not be using mobile phones and tablets and TV in their rooms. They shouldn't be. Because after 8 o'clock is a watershed hours, then what happens after that? Things they shouldn't be watching, it will come through. Yes, we say it's an education, but they're getting the education from the wrong platform. Online education, one of the biggest cause of a marriage breakdown nowadays is because they expect physical intimacy between husband and wife to be how they watch it in TV. That's not how it's supposed to be done. Education is supposed to be done in our house. We have to be open and honest with our children. We cannot be shy with our children to discuss certain issues. We have to be open with them because education starts at home. If the children are not getting educated in the maktab or in the masjid or in the madaris or at home, where are they getting educated about these personal matters? About pornographic materials, about sexual intercourse between the two human beings. Where are they getting educated? We have to be honest with ourselves. Well, we are embarrassed to talk to my son, we are embarrassed to talk to my nephew. But I can't talk to my daughter, I can't talk to my niece. Someone has to do the talking. Because this reality has happened, the life has been continuing since Adam alayhi salam till now, and it will continue till akhirah. So who is going to do these discussions? I can't expect other person who doesn't have any relationship with my child to teach them the right way. Especially internet, Google. Because anything can be shared on the Google. Even YouTube, they're not that safe. Facebook, how safe is that? These TikToks and these all these different varieties, you lose count. There's so many. There was a TikTok, there was Snapchats and so many different things.
Just to follow on from that then, is there a need for reforms in the way we parent and teaching? So is there a need for reforms?
Is there a need for reforms? 100%. We all need to be aware of what our children are watching.
The question is, does it need to be reform in our parenting and teaching?
Our parents needs to be we as
The question was, what is it?
sorry. What's the question again? Does there need to be reform and does our parents need to change?
Does there need to be reform in relation to devices and social media?
Parenting and teaching.
We definitely. Does there need to be a reform and does our parents need to? Does our parent need to? Does there need to be a reform and does our parent need to be educated?
Reform the way we parent and teach.
100%, but that's the same era. If you think about it from the time of Prophet ﷺ till now, there's been a significant difference of changes in our style of parenting. If you look into our forefathers, and the way we've been brought up, the way they were brought up, and the way their fathers were brought up, there's been significant changes within that style. And I think everybody would agree with me on that one. And it's about always been reflecting in action in terms of reflecting where we're going, where we're going, how is society. We cannot depend everything on our own experience. Because remember, our time is finishing. We are no longer a child. Our time is finishing, our time is coming for us to go to the next step. Our children are growing up. So it's always about preparing our child, preparing the child. Because there's a hadith, clear hadith. A strong person is better than a weak person. But strong doesn't only mean physical strength. It means strength in every angle, in every aspect, be it wealth, be it mal. That's why giving a child, there's a dua, be niyaz, is self-sufficiency. There's a dua we pray, self-sufficiency, ghina. Allahumma inni as'aluka min al-ghina. There's 5 words in that, and the last word is ghina. Because why? Ghina is also strength. Mal is also a strength. Strength, physical strength is also a strength. Having good upbringing is also a strength. Understanding deen is also a strength. So many different elements to it. So, does our parent need to change? Of course they need to change. Because if you think about it, when we were growing up, officially in school, sex education was taught at the age of 11 and 12. But right now, that has significantly gone down by 5 years. It starts officially at 5 and 6 and 7. So we need to adapt our parenting. All I'm trying to say from this statement is our parenting needs to adapt constantly, and we need to be astute and aware of what's happening within our surroundings. Social media per se is not as bad. It's not bad. Likewise, certain tools. 20 years ago, TV was outright haram. But now, Islam channel, TV channel, this channel, that channel, ulamas are using this forum. Social media was haram. Ulamas are using this forum. Internet was, in internet you can literally get anything and everything in the world. There's nothing that you can't get. Depending on our usage, it becomes problematic where you go. So, it's about us adjusting ourselves. It's about us being aware of our children's needs. It's about us aware of supervision in terms of what the child is doing. What the child is doing and what they're getting up to. So, i.e. using the mobile phones, because you don't want to restrict a child, because when they go to the school and the playground, the boy and the friends are using something very latest, and you can afford it, but you're not giving that child, that can be a means for bullying that child. Then they feel left out, they feel like other, they don't feel belonged in the area, and that can be a form of bullying for them. So it's about being aware, it's about being in tune with the child. And I mentioned that the stories of Hussein and Hassan radiallahu ta'ala anhu, the Rawi, the person who narrates the story, he says, I can't fully remember which child it was, whether it was Hussein radiallahu ta'ala anhu or Hassan radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam delayed his farad salah in order for the child to complete his playing on his back. So, Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, why did he delay? Of course, there's many different interpretations. One of them is, he was in tune with the child's view and his world. If you think about it, the child felt comfortable in Medina Munawwara where all the Sahabas, even the Munafiq, would attend for a salah. And he was content to go right in the front of the saf and disturb the Imam. In that case, Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So he had to go through all the different safs in the first place. And no one said nothing. And what did Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam do? He understood this is just a child's world. The child needs play. So this is the modern era. Modern era is technology. Child needs to understand about blockchain. Child needs to understand about artificial intelligence. Child needs to understand what it means using computers. Child needs to understand how social media can be used for our benefit, for your benefit. So it's about being on the journey. So always about being on the journey with the child. Because question is, what do you want the child to be tomorrow? Because if the child, you're educating that child. Education doesn't necessarily mean only being on the classroom base. There's a lecturer doing the slides, there's a lecturer talking, and everybody listens with their heads down and making notes. That's not the only way of learning. It's one of the way of learning. There are a variety of forms of learning. Every child is different. World consensus is there are 4 different learning styles. Every person is different. It's about tapping into that child. You can only tap into the child if you're actively interested in that child. What does active interest mean? It doesn't mean passive engagement. It means active engagement. You know what the child is getting up to. When he or she wakes up, what does he like? What does she doesn't like? What time they go to school? What kind of breakfast they have? Everything. And only way to do that is you be involved with the child, making breakfast. How many of us actually cook breakfast for our children? How many of us actually play the last role when the child is going to sleep? Of course, we have variety of needs. We all also have our own needs, our responsibilities. But it's showing and being there. I hope that suffices.
Just to follow on then, what activities do you suggest for children that are bored at home during COVID?
Subhanallah, what activities? It's about being creative. If you look into the what activities do I suggest doing at home in light of being bored? Okay, subhanallah, everybody needs to look into something called a concept of embedded learning. It's an embedded learning. And embedded learning basically means using everyday activities everyday equipments for learning. So literally, I've got a paper here, I've got a pad here, I've got a table here, I've got a water here. So I could use that to form an English lesson, to a shapes lesson. I could use that form for mathematical purposes. So many analysis, dissection, so many things. It's about being slightly being creative. Sometimes when I go out and traveling with my children just to get rid of the boredom, I make them play games. How many different types of cars there? What colors there? So it's about recognizing. They're very young, 4 and 5. So it's about what kind of cars going past, how fast are they going? Different types. So it's using everyday equipments and activities to do that. How many of us play games? How many of us play reading games? How many of us play word games, Scrabble games? You can easily make games using papers at home. If you're slightly creative with the paper, you could make so many things. If you want to use technology, let's go into YouTube. How to make shapes, how to play games with the children, how to play arts and crafts, how to use cooking as an example if they're slightly older. Get them involved in cooking and cleaning. There's so many things can be done, it's unbelievable. All it needs is sitting down with the child. Okay, we're all bored, what are we going to do? Talk to the child. There's no harm in talking to the child. Children will tell you, I'm bored. And if they don't tell you sarahatan or verbally that I'm bored, they will tell you through the body language, I am fighting and pushing and shoving each other, especially the siblings.
And then another question, what are the common parenting mistakes you have seen?
Subhanallah, what are the common, it's always trying to exert their own, what are the common mistakes that I have seen from parents? Okay, it's a vast question, and I can't answer that in a straight, simple way. One of the biggest mistakes that I have seen is parents trying to parents are trying to make the child what they felt they didn't get when they were young. Not realizing that child may not want to follow the same path as you. But as a parent, our responsibility is to make that child a good Muslim, not necessarily a good alim. That's not for us. If it happens, fantastic, mashallah, brilliant. Our job is to make that child become a good Muslim. A child will become a good Muslim if they see us being a good person. So if we are good, child will, according to the formula, will naturally gravitate towards being good. And also, and that is our responsibility. Our responsibility is for us to be good and exert goodness on the child. The rest we leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why we make a lot of du'as to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One of the famous du'as is رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. You're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help. Remember, we do what we can do. We have to do what we can do. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. We make that dua. Goodness and the badness come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He gives us the tawfiq. What's another dua? اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. According to some fuqahas and commentators, one of them is a good children, mal and goodness in this world, etc., and success in the next life. Obviously, you can't be success in the next life if your children are not. You haven't done a good job with the children. This is criteria. So these du'as, then another hadith is a du'a huwa al-ibadah. Another hadith says ad-du'a mukhul ibadah, essence of the ibadah. Du'a is the ibadah, and du'a is also the essence of ibadah. So we have to combine our physical activities with spirituality, i.e. making dua to Allah, acting ourselves. If we are not praying salah ourselves, and we're saying to the child, son, it's zuhur salah, go and pray. You understand? Today I was there during Asr Namaz. My son was saying, Abu, it's time for Asr prayer. So subhanallah, I was very pleased. He is reminding me time for Asr Salah. I was busy with something else. He's saying, Abu, it's time for Asr prayer. Subhanallah, this is amazing, isn't it? But if we are involved in watching a TV series on 6 o'clock every evening, for example, or 8 o'clock in the evening, for example, or 7:30 in the evening, and we all as a family watch it, the child will remind you if you're watching something else. Saturday, 3 o'clock, football match. Everybody needs to watch a football match. Friday, 7 o'clock, it's our cinema day. Tuesday, 7 o'clock, it's a date night. These are the things children are watching. There's no harm in date night, as long as it's halal date night. What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. As long as it's halal date night, you as a spouse are spending time, it's promoted, it's sunnah, it's great. Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he expressed his love for Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha openly. When a person asked, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who is the most beloved person to you? He said, Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. Then he said, Ya Rasulullah, who is from the men's side? He said, her father, Abu Bakr Siddiq radiallahu ta'ala anhu. There's nothing wrong with that. So, point is, we have to be an example ourselves. That is the example. And we need to understand the Surah Al-Hal, current situation. Every area, every town, every city, whatever the issues are, England will be different in Scotland. Scotland issues will be different in Sweden. Sweden issues will be different from Pakistan. Pakistan issues will be different from Bangladesh. Bangladesh issues will be different from India. That's why our scholars say, don't give fatwas when you go to a new town. Let the local scholars deal with the local issues. Why? Because you don't know the contextual, you don't know the context of the area. It's about understanding the child. If the child in the modern days is gone to school for 16 years, he loves art, and you're there telling him off every day, no, you must do this. You're looking at clashing here. Cooperation, partnership between the two, because that your son or your daughter will be your best partner.
Management issues, these are deep and he's growing hatred towards us both. What would you advise?
Subhanallah, I would say get in contact with us privately. There's more to it than that. What is? There's no straightforward answer. We need to go on a journey in terms of identify where the issues come from, when that's the issue, the anger issues and all that stuff started from. Then that way we can tackle into certain aspects. It's called hit and miss. You're throwing darts at certain angles and see where it hits. So for me to do that, I need to go through a journey with the person. But I can usually identify where it starts from.
Another question, there's a belief some children are what they are because of nature. Do you agree with that?
Not necessarily, no, I don't. Because our hadith says child is born on fitra, innocent. Then it's the environment that has issues. Because we believe in La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. Anything and everything Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam done and said is absolute truth. And it's good for us. Also Quran, anything and everything that says in the Quran is absolute truth and it's good for us. We must have that belief in our heart. Otherwise our iman will be questioned.
Is it more important for children to learn the Quran quickly, or is it better for them to understand the Quran and take longer?
Subhanallah, beautiful, amazing question. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give khair to every single one of the questioners. Is it better to learn the Quran quickly, or is it better to learn the Quran slowly and understand the meaning? Both are equally important as each other. Because if you are not pronouncing the Quran correctly, then you will be making mistake. For example, the word malakun, milkun, malikun. Malik means king, milkun means kingdom, malik means angel, malakun means angel. So one simple word with three different fatha and zabar and zer has changed the entire meaning. Kalbun, qalbun. Kalbun means dog, qalbun means heart. So for us to understand read the pronunciation of Quran, we need to get the tajweed correct. Reading with tajweed is also very, 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 very important. According to some is fard, according to some is wajib, and some says you have to read this compulsory basically. So reading the Quran with tajweed is equally important. So in the initial stages, in the early ages, under 7-year-old, 7, 8-year-old, 9-year-old, we should concentrate on recitation of the Quran with full tajweed, inshallah. Then afterwards, when the mindset opens and they have lateral thinking, because according to the child development stages in a child, 7 is one key age, 11 is another key age, 13, 14 is another key age, and then 16 and 18 is another key age. So as the child progresses, start to get them to understand the meaning of Quran, basic Arabic, basic grammar, basic nahwa, sarf, English translation, and so forth and so forth. You need to understand what you are doing. For example, I'm reading Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim. What am I saying? Allahumma inni dhalamtu nafsi dhulman kathira. What am I saying? Or am I just literally rutting Allahumma, I'm on a race. But in the back of my head, I'm thinking I need to go so and so, I need to play my PS3, I need to play Fortnite, I need to go and do my shopping. But really, what are you saying? So of course, understanding the Quran is critical. Very, very important, because essentially, Islam is based on two things. Quran and Sunnah of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Simple as that. So if you don't understand either one of them, then you are on path you are walking towards the path of Jannah blind, basically.
So Mullah, that's us finishing with the question. This is your last Ramadan. like
Oh,
message.
subhanallah.
Do you want to conclude with anything? Anything?
Basically, Jazakallah for everyone for sending in the questions. It's been a journey, amazing journey. First and foremost, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of us. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept the facilitators. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us a springboard and stepping board in this Ramadan for us to reflect and think. The engagement of our children is a two-way thing. We need to be understanding of our parents, and parents need to be understanding of our children. Parents need to think that this is a rough diamond, my child is a rough diamond. Depending on how I am with that child, this child will become a zakhira for me. Child needs to understand that this is my parents, and parents are birrul walidain. The being nice and being kind and listening to the parents is very, very critically important. The many ahadiths and many places in Quran is mentioned that respect of our parents is very, very important. Being kind to them, being nice to them, looking after them, it's very, very important for all of us. So really, we should use this Ramadan as the last few days left, praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because we all know towards the latter part of the night, toward the few minutes before few moments before the Fajr Salah, the Azan and Fajr time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala literally asks human beings, is there anybody that wants anything from me? Is there anybody who wants forgiveness? Is there anybody who wants something like that? So we should utilize that time really, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for our child to become a zakhira, a passive income, a sadaqah jariyah for us in the hereafter. And one of the greatest dua that we can all pray is رَبَّنَا هَبْ لَنَا مِنْ أَزْوَاجِنَا وَذُرِّيَّاتِنَا قُرَّةَ أَعْيُنٍ وَجَعَلْنَا لِلْمُتَّقِينَ إِمَامًا. This dua is so jami' and so comprehensive that within that you're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to change your own character as well as change the character of the child so the child becomes good in the future.
Reminder to the viewers that tomorrow night we're going live with a dua.
Oh, okay. What time? 12 o'clock?
And you can join.
Subhanallah. Dear readers and dear listeners and viewers, you are kindly and humbly requested to participate 12 o'clock tomorrow for a live dua khatam. Midnight, 12 a.m., not 12 p.m. 12 p.m. is my tajweed lesson. So you're welcome to join in that as well, inshallah. So 12 a.m. inshallah, tomorrow night, everybody is kindly requested to participate, and Mufti Nabil Achasab will do a beautiful dua, an amazing dua, an emotional dua. And we should all make dua in this, because this is something unique. COVID-19 has got us to do a Ramadan in a different way, in a unique way. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for Him to accept all our efforts, accept our endeavors over the past 27, 20, 28 Ramadans, 26 Ramadan, depending on where you are doing it, etc. And any khata, any deficiencies, any inefficiencies, we ask for forgiveness and maghfirat and dua from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.